My name is Jenna Wallace. I'm 34 years old, and I never imagined I'd be telling this story, not like this. I'm not the kind of person who shares things publicly. I don't have a blog or a YouTube channel or a habit of venting online. But after what happened, keeping it in feels impossible. It's not just about me anymore. It's about a little girl who sat across from me in complete silence, and then, without warning, told me something that changed everything I thought I knew about the family I married into. This didn't happen years ago. It wasn't some distant memory I'm only now processing. It was recent, raw, too fresh to ignore, and honestly, if I don't talk about it now, I'm afraid I never will. It started the way so many things in that family do, with a favor that wasn't really a favor. You know the type. The kind where helping out is less about kindness and more about obligation wrapped in guilt. Nicole, my sister-in-law, called me out of nowhere on a Wednesday morning. I was unloading groceries when she asked if I could watch Mia for the weekend. Her voice was light, rehearsed. She didn't explain why, she just said it like I'd already agreed. Like this was something any good sister-in-law would say yes to without question. I remember blinking at the speakerphone on my kitchen counter. Mia? The daughter they never bring around? The one I'd only seen twice in passing, both times sitting completely still, never saying a word? I asked if everything was okay. Nicole just laughed and said they needed a break. A getaway. Something about reconnecting in Hawaii. She's quiet, Nicole said. Barely any trouble at all. You won't even notice her. Then she added something that made my stomach tighten. You're the only one we trust. I should have said no. I should have listened to that part of me that already knew something wasn't right. But instead, I smiled like an idiot and said, of course. They dropped Mia off that Friday afternoon. No bags, no instructions, no medication schedule or emergency contacts. Just a pink sweatshirt folded over her lap and a stuffed bear clutched in her arms. Tim, Nicole's husband, barely made eye contact. Nicole gave me a quick hug, thanked me again, and they were gone. Their car hadn't even pulled out of the driveway when I realized I didn't know how old Mia was. 9, 10? She was tall for her age but thin, like a branch that hadn't seen sun in months. She didn't say a word when they left, just stared at me from the entryway like I was a stranger she wasn't sure how to approach. And to be honest, I didn't know how to approach her either. I'd never been left alone with a child who didn't speak. There's something disorienting about the silence, not the kind you get used to, but the kind that hangs heavy, like it's watching you back. I led her to the guest room, showed her the bathroom, offered her snacks, nothing. No reaction. She didn't nod, didn't shake her head, just walked behind me, slow and distant, like she was walking through someone else's house. And maybe she was. That first evening, I kept trying. I made macaroni and cheese. Left the TV on a low volume. Even brought out an old set of watercolor paints I used to mess around with. She sat at the table while I painted a small tree. I asked if she wanted to try. She blinked slowly, then looked away. I started to wonder if maybe she couldn't understand me. I asked her gently if she preferred another language, Spanish, maybe, or ASL. But still, nothing. I wasn't angry. I just felt helpless. She didn't look scared or upset. Just blank, like someone who'd learned not to expect anything from anyone. That night, she slept with the lights on. I noticed when I checked in on her. She was curled up under the blanket, her stuffed bear tucked into her arms. The hall light cast a long shadow across the floor. I left it on for her. I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about how odd it all was. Why would Nicole never mention that her daughter needed special care? Why hadn't they left me with at least a note? I told myself I'd give it one more day. If it still felt strange, I'd call and ask more directly. But I never got the chance. Because the next day, something happened. And that was when I realized Mia wasn't the quiet one in the house. I was. Because she knew more than she was supposed to. And she'd been waiting for the right person to tell. The next morning started quietly. Too quietly. I woke up before my alarm, disoriented and slightly cold, like my body knew something was off before my brain caught up. The house was still, The kind of stillness that makes you pause in the hallway and listen harder. Thinking maybe you missed something. I slipped on a robe and padded toward the guest room, half expecting to find Mia curled up exactly how I'd left her. But she wasn't there. The bed was made, not perfectly, but made. The kind of effort a child makes when they've been taught to clean up after themselves, not because they want to, but because they're afraid not to. Her stuffed bear was sitting on the edge of the blanket, upright, its little face turned toward the door like it was keeping watch. My heart jumped a little. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The living room. Nothing. My steps quickened. I turned the corner into the kitchen, and that's when I saw her. She was standing on a stool, perfectly balanced, reaching for a tea bag on the top shelf. Calm, collected, barefoot and completely silent, she glanced at me once, then went back to what she was doing like it was the most normal thing in the world. My mouth opened but nothing came out. I was so used to silence from her that I didn't even know how to greet her anymore. I just watched as she dropped the tea bag into a mug and carefully poured hot water from the electric kettle. She didn't spill a single drop. I remember thinking, how many times has she done this? I cleared my throat. Good morning, sweetheart. She didn't reply, just stood there, waiting for the tea to steep. I walked closer and crouched beside her, trying to read her face. Her expression was blank again, but there was something different in her eyes. A kind of weight, like she was tired of pretending. I gently asked, "Did you sleep okay?" "Nothing." "Do you want breakfast?" Still nothing. I stayed crouched a little longer, then stood and turned toward the fridge. That's when I heard it. "She likes honey in her tea." I froze. My body went still before I even registered what she said. I turned slowly. Mia wasn't looking at me. She was staring down into her mug, swaying slightly on her feet. Her voice had been soft, but not hesitant. No fear, just quiet knowing, like she wasn't asking, she was telling. I stepped closer, careful not to startle her. "Mia, are you talking about yourself?" She didn't move. I gently asked, "Who is she?" She turned her head slightly, just enough to let me know she heard me. "The other one," she said. "The one before me." My stomach twisted. There was no other one. Nicole and Tim only had one child. Mia was an only child. That's what they always said. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were shaking as I poured her a bowl of cereal. Pretending everything was fine. But nothing was fine. I knew it, and I think she did too. We sat in the living room after breakfast. The TV was on but muted. Mia sat on the carpet, legs crossed, cradling her bear in her lap. I sat on the couch behind her, sipping coffee I couldn't taste. I wanted to ask her what she meant. I wanted to press, but something about the way she held herself, still, alert, told me not to. Like she was deciding how much she could trust me. Like if I said the wrong thing, she'd shut down again. So I waited, and eventually, she spoke again. Her voice was quiet but steady, and this time, she didn't look away. "She used to sleep in my room," Mia said. "She liked to draw on the walls. But they painted over it after." I leaned forward. "Mia, who was she?" She paused. A long pause. Then she whispered, "She had the same name as me." My breath caught. My heart started pounding, and I didn't even realize I'd set my mug down until it clinked against the table too hard. She didn't flinch. She just kept talking, her words slow and deliberate, like they'd been rehearsed 1,000 times but never spoken out loud. "They told me not to talk about her. They said she was a mistake. That she made them look bad." I wanted to say something. Anything. But I couldn't. My throat felt tight. This wasn't just childhood imagination. Her tone didn't have that lilt kids get when they make things up. This was something else. Something heavy. Something memorized. I found one of her drawings once. Mia said. It was behind the dresser. She drew a woman with no eyes. She looked up at me then. Right into me. That's when they stopped being nice to me. I couldn't breathe. Every nerve in my body told me to run. But I stayed seated. I had to. Because something told me this child had been holding all of this in for longer than she even knew how to count. And I was the first person who ever looked her in the eye and didn't tell her to be quiet. She stood up slowly, still holding the bear, and walked toward the hallway. I want to show you something, she said. And I followed her. God help me, I followed her. She led me down the hallway like she knew it better than I did. Her small feet made no sound against the hardwood, and the bear dangled from her fingers like it was just another part of her body. I didn't ask questions. I didn't speak. I just walked behind her, heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. She stopped outside the linen closet and pointed. Not at the door, but the wall beside it. Here, she said. I stared at it for a second, expecting something obvious, but there was nothing. Just white paint and the faint outline where a picture frame had once hung. I reached out and ran my hand along the wall. Smooth, clean, too clean. I tapped it lightly. Hollow. There was space behind it. I didn't want to admit how fast my hands moved after that. Like my body was searching before my brain could catch up. I pressed at the corners, one by one, until a small panel gave way and popped forward just slightly, enough for my nails to catch the edge and pull. Behind it wasn't a room. Not even a closet, just a narrow recess, maybe 12 inches wide, dark and cramped. And at the back, something was taped to the wall. Paper. Crumpled, torn at the edges. I pulled it out with shaking hands and unfolded it. A child's drawing. Red crayon. A woman with long hair. No eyes. No mouth, just black where her face should have been. And next to her, a smaller figure holding a bear. I didn't know what to say. Mia was staring at the floor, like she couldn't look at it again. She said if I told, they'd put me in the wall too, she whispered. I felt cold. My hands went numb. I wanted to scream but nothing came out. I crouched down and gently held her shoulders. Mia, who said that to you? She didn't answer. Was it your mom? Your dad? She shook her head slowly, then looked me straight in the eyes with something that didn't belong in a child's face. It was the woman who used to live here. Before them. Before me. I froze. You mean, someone else lived here before? She nodded once. They don't like to talk about her. But sometimes I hear them. When they think I'm sleeping. I stood up, holding the drawing like it might dissolve in my fingers. I wanted to call Nicole. I wanted to demand answers. But something told me that was exactly what they were counting on. That I'd panic. That I'd dismiss Mia like everyone else. And honestly, a part of me wasn't sure anymore what I believed. That night I locked my bedroom door. I didn't sleep. I sat in bed with the drawing folded beside me, watching the shadows move across the ceiling. Around 3 in the morning I heard footsteps. Slow, careful, moving past my door and into the kitchen. I held my breath, then silence. Then the fridge door opened. I waited. 30 seconds. Then it shut again, and the footsteps returned, but this time they stopped outside my door. I stared at the crack beneath it and saw 2 feet. Small, bare. Mia. I waited for her to knock. She didn't. She just stood there, for almost 5 full minutes. Then I heard her whisper through the wood. She's still here. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My chest felt like it was caving in. Then she said, she sleeps under the house. And just like that, she walked away. Quiet as ever. Like nothing had happened. Like that was just something kids say in the middle of the night. But I knew better. Because Mia had never said anything without meaning it. Every word she spoke felt like it was being pulled from a place that had been sealed shut for years. And I was starting to think I hadn't been asked to watch her. I'd been brought here, chosen, because someone needed to hear what really happened. And because Mia knew her time was running out. The next morning I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. Mia sat at the table before I even came out of my room. Her bear was in her lap, and her eyes were fixed on the window like she was waiting for something that wasn't me. I poured myself coffee with shaking hands. She didn't speak. I didn't either. There was a tension in the room that didn't come from her. It came from the house. Like the walls knew what I'd seen. What I now held in my mind. I glanced at the clock. 10:30 a.m. Nicole still hadn't called. No check-in, no text. Nothing. I picked up my phone and stared at it, thumb hovering over her contact. But I didn't call, because deep down I knew what kind of people they were. The kind that smiles in front of guests and whispers behind locked doors. The kind that gives you silence wrapped in politeness and calls it keeping the peace. I'd grown up with people like that. I married into it. So instead, I sat across from Mia and said, "Tell me what you want me to know." She didn't look surprised. She didn't even blink. She just said, "They don't visit that part of the yard anymore." My throat tightened. Which part? She turned her head toward the window and pointed. Behind the shed. I looked out. The yard was large, neat, symmetrical like everything else in their lives. A garden bed, a swing, a white painted toolshed in the far right corner. I had never paid attention to it, but now it looked still, too still, like even the air around it had been warned not to move. Mia stood and walked to the sliding door. She didn't open it, just waited. I followed. We stepped outside into the sunlight. Birds chirped in the trees, a breeze moved through the hedges, and everything should have felt normal. But it didn't. The further we walked, the colder it felt. Not the air, something underneath. I could feel it under my feet, like walking on something that didn't want to be stepped on. Mia didn't slow down. She moved past the flower beds, through the short gate, and around the shed to a patch of dirt that was just slightly uneven. She stopped and pointed again. Here. I looked down. The soil was darker, sunk in at the center. No grass, just a jagged square of turned-over earth maybe 6 feet across. "What is this?" I asked. Mia looked up at me and said, "She cried the loudest right here." My skin prickled. Mia, who cried? Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then she whispered, "Me." But the first "me." I stepped back. I couldn't help it. My body reacted before my brain could catch up. Mia didn't follow. She stood perfectly still beside that patch of dirt like she belonged there. Like she'd always known it was there. I wanted to tell myself she was confused. Making things up, but nothing about her seemed confused. She wasn't a child trying to scare me. She wasn't guessing. She was remembering. I walked back toward the house in silence, pretending I didn't feel the ground shift beneath my feet. She followed me slowly. That night, I went to the garage while Mia slept. I waited until she was breathing deep and slow, her bear curled into her chest. I slipped out the side door with a flashlight and gloves. I didn't know what I was looking for. I told myself it was nothing. But when I reached the toolshed and turned the handle, it opened without resistance. Inside was clean, organized, a pegboard with hooks, a set of labeled drawers, a red toolbox, gardening tools aligned like surgical instruments. I opened the drawers one by one. Trowels, clippers, rope. I froze. Rope, a pair of shears, heavy work gloves, and at the bottom, under a folded tarp, I found a small leather-bound notebook with no name. No lock, just dirt under the cover. I opened it. Only a few pages were filled in. Childish handwriting, uneven spacing. The first line read, "She says I shouldn't be here." The next page, "They told me to stop writing but I don't know how else to talk." My hands trembled. I flipped forward. "They said she ran away. But I think she's under the floor." Last page, "If someone finds this, please don't tell them. They'll bury you too." I stood there in the shed, clutching the notebook, hearing only my breath. That was when I knew. I hadn't been asked to help. I hadn't been trusted. I'd been tested. And whatever Mia had told me so far, it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the hallway outside Mia's room, the notebook in my hands, reading the same sentences over and over. I kept waiting for something to shift, for it to make sense, for my brain to catch up with what my body already knew. The handwriting matched Mia's, but the entries were dated 3 years ago. 3 years. My breath caught when I realized what that meant. She would have been 6. Maybe younger. And yet the words weren't 6-year-old words. They were cold, flat, observant, like she was writing for someone who might never see it but still needed to know. I didn't move until morning. Mia opened her door without surprise and sat down beside me on the floor. She didn't ask about the notebook. She didn't look at it. She just whispered, "I'm not supposed to be here either." I turned to her slowly. "What do you mean?" Her voice dropped. She wanted out. She asked for help. They didn't like that. I tried to stay calm. Who asked for help? She blinked. Me. But not me. I felt dizzy. Do you remember her name? Mia looked at the ceiling, as if it was written there. Then she said, they called her Mia too. But she had a different middle name. I heard them say it once. I pressed gently. Do you know what it was? She nodded. Marie. Mia Marie. I stood up too quickly and had to steady myself against the wall. Nicole and Tim had a daughter named Mia. Everyone knew that, but no one, not once, had ever used a middle name. I opened the hallway closet, hands shaking, and found the lockbox where they kept spare papers and mail. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just something real, tangible, proof, and there it was, a hospital bracelet, tiny, plastic, cracked with age, Mia Marie Halston, date of birth, 5 years before the Mia sleeping in that room. My heart slammed. There were two. There had been two, but no one ever said a word. I turned to Mia. Do you know where she went? She didn't speak, just stood and walked away. I followed her back through the house, past the guest room, into the laundry area. She stopped in front of the floor vent. They kept her down there, she whispered. I dropped to my knees and pulled the vent loose. Behind it, nothing but black. A crawl space maybe, but not one I could access. They only opened it when she screamed, Mia added, and my hand clenched around the edge of the vent until my knuckles went white. I backed away. I couldn't do this alone. I needed answers, and I was going to get them. Not from Mia, not from the notebook, but from the only person who would be dumb enough to slip. I called Nicole. She answered after 3 rings, cheerful, beach wind in her voice, the sound of water and laughter in the background. Hey, how's our little mute doing? I didn't answer. I let the silence hang. Jenna? She said, tone shifting slightly. Everything okay? I asked calmly. What's her middle name? Pause. Who? Your daughter, I said. What's her full name? Mia, she said, cautious. Just Mia. Middle name. Another pause. Mia Grace. Why? My blood went cold. I said nothing. Just hung up. She didn't call back. She knew. And now, so did I. The girl in that room wasn't their first daughter. She was the second. And someone had gone to a lot of trouble to make sure no one ever remembered the first. But Mia remembered. And she was done being quiet. I didn't tell Mia I made the call. I didn't tell her about the bracelet either. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me still thought if I spoke it out loud, it would become irreversible. That this thing I was sinking into wouldn't just be a suspicion, but something I could never walk back from. But Mia didn't ask. She just watched me that day. Quiet, observant, like she was waiting to see what I'd do with what I knew. She stayed close, not in a needy way, more like she was guarding me. Like now that I knew even part of it, we were somehow on the same side. That afternoon I told her we were going for a drive. I packed a bag, brought snacks, even her bear. She didn't resist. She climbed into the car like she knew we weren't just going out. I drove 2 hours across state lines to a little town no one from Nicole's perfect suburb would bother visiting. I parked in front of the county records office, heart pounding, palms sweating. I didn't know if this would work, if they'd even give me anything, but I had one thing on my side, the last name Halston. And small towns remember names. It took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of digging through death records, birth logs, juvenile cases. The woman at the desk didn't ask too many questions. She just handed me a folder and said, "This one was never closed right. Got buried under a foster case." Sad. I opened it. Mia Marie Halston. Date of birth, exactly 5 years before the girl in my car. Declared missing at age 5. Parents listed, Nicole Halston and Timothy Halston. Reported last seen inside their home. Investigation closed due to insufficient evidence of foul play after 3 months. No body, no follow-up, nothing, but someone, and I still don't know who, had clipped a newspaper article inside. Local press, buried on page 6. Just a paragraph. Neighbors reported hearing screams days before the child was reported missing. One source said they'd seen a man digging behind the Halston property at night, but the report was not substantiated. I sat there staring at the words until they stopped looking like English. I don't remember leaving the building. I don't remember the drive back. I just remember gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached, and Mia's soft voice from the back seat, saying, "They always come back smiling." Like nothing happened. I asked her then, without turning around, "Do you remember what they did?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, she begged them to stop. She screamed. And then, she stopped. I didn't know how to help her then. But I know now. That night I didn't unpack. I didn't cook. I didn't brush my teeth or turn on the TV. I just sat in their cold kitchen, in that sterile, lifeless house, and stared at the wall where her drawing had been hidden. Mia sat with me. She didn't play. She didn't ask questions. She didn't even hold the bear. She just said, "They think if no one remembers her, she stops existing. But I remember. And now you do too." And for the first time since she arrived, she reached out, not to hold my hand, but to place something in it. A hairpin. Bent, old, rusted. She wore it, Mia said, when they put her in the dark. I didn't sleep for the third night in a row. I sat at the edge of the guest bed, staring at the hairpin in my hand like it might start whispering if I held it long enough. It was small, delicate, made for a child's hair, the kind you find in little plastic sets at dollar stores. But it wasn't plastic, it was metal, bent at the curve, with something red flaking off the inside like rust, only deeper. I told myself it was rust. I needed it to be rust. Mia had gone to sleep after giving it to me like she'd just handed over a receipt. No fear, no drama, just this steady, unnatural calm that scared me more than anything else. It was the calm of someone who's lived too long with truths no one else wanted to carry. And now she'd passed them to me. The next morning I made a decision. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house with those walls and that yard and that crawl space. I packed 2 bags. One for Mia, one for me. I left the notebook in my suitcase, tucked between sweatshirts. I zipped the hairpin into the front pocket. I charged my phone. I printed out the death record. The newspaper clipping. I made copies of everything and emailed them to myself. I wasn't going to let this disappear like she did. Mia stood by the door, her backpack already over her shoulder before I told her we were leaving. She didn't ask where. She didn't look worried. She just nodded and said, "Can we stop by the tree first?" I didn't understand what she meant. I thought maybe it was a swing tree, or a place she used to sit. But she led me through the back gate, past the same patch of dirt behind the shed, and further, into a strip of wooded land that I hadn't realized even belonged to the property. Overgrown, thorny, with branches that reached like fingers. She moved through it like she'd done it 1,000 times. I followed, ducking, pushing back vines, until we reached a single, crooked tree with bark peeled in long vertical streaks. Someone had carved into it. Not names, not hearts, just lines, vertical, slashes, dozens of them. I counted 12 before I stopped. They weren't decorative, they weren't random, they were tracking something. Mia reached into a gap in the base of the trunk and pulled out another drawing. Folded tight, she handed it to me and stepped back. I opened it slowly. Another child's image, the same faceless woman, but this time, there were 2 smaller figures beside her. One standing, one lying down, and above the drawing, in faded pencil, "She knows I'm next." I dropped to my knees. That was the moment I realized something had been missed. Not just by the police. Not just by the neighbors. But by me. I had been thinking about this like a horror story. A tragedy. A buried truth. But this wasn't over. It wasn't history. This was still happening. Mia wasn't just remembering someone else's ending. She was warning me she hadn't escaped it yet. I grabbed her by the shoulders. "Mia, have they ever hurt you?" She looked at me like the question didn't make sense. "They don't have to. They just make sure no one listens." That's worse. We left that day. I didn't tell Nicole. I didn't call Tim. I didn't leave a note. I drove 3 hours to my cousin's house in a town they'd never think to check. She wasn't home. I had a spare key. I settled Mia in the guest room and locked every door. I stayed up again, waiting. checking windows, half expecting Nicole to show up banging on the glass with that Stepford smile and soft voice, acting like I'd overreacted. But they didn't come. Not that day. Not the next. Not the one after that. And I started to believe maybe we were safe. Until I got the envelope in the mail. No return address. No stamp. Just dropped into the mailbox like someone had walked right up to it. Inside, a photo. Grainy. Zoomed in. Taken through glass. Me. Sitting at the kitchen table. The same table I sat at with Mia, holding the hairpin. It wasn't from their house. It was from this one. My hands were still trembling when I flipped the photo over. No writing. No date. Just the image. Me. With my head in my hand. Frozen in that exact moment of doubt and exhaustion. Someone had been watching. Not at the Halston house. Here, at my cousin's. A place I hadn't told anyone we were going to. A place no one should have known existed, much less stood outside with a camera pointed at the window. I looked around the room like I'd never seen it before. Every corner suddenly felt too open, too exposed. I checked every lock again. Every window. I turned off the lights and pulled the curtains shut, heart racing in a way I hadn't felt even when Mia whispered about being buried. She came into the room without a word. She saw the photo in my hand. She didn't ask what it was. She just said, "It's starting again." I wanted to ask what she meant, but I already knew. We hadn't run far enough. We hadn't run fast enough. I dropped the photo into the fireplace and burned it. Watched it curl and vanish into black dust. It didn't make me feel better. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the hallway outside Mia's door again. I kept the notebook beside me. I checked my phone every 10 minutes, waiting for a knock, a sound, a car pulling up. Nothing came, but at 3 in the morning, Mia's voice came through the wall. She wasn't in her bed. She was lying on the floor, close to the air vent. Whispering like she was talking to someone inside it. I crept closer, pressed my ear to the wall. Her voice was clear. I told her, "She knows now. You don't have to be mad anymore." Silence. "I'm not scared of you." "She isn't either." Silence. "Then, we'll both leave this time. You can't stop her." I stepped into the room. She turned her head, slowly, as if she already knew I was standing there. She didn't look ashamed or afraid. "She wants me to stay," Mia said. "But I think she just doesn't want to be alone." I sat beside her on the floor. "Who is she, Mia?" "She was the first," she said, eyes unfocused. "She didn't want to be forgotten. That's why she stayed in the walls." My chest tightened. "Is she real?" Mia nodded. "She's not angry. Just sad. She remembers the dark. She remembers the sound of the dirt when they pushed it over her face. She remembers screaming but no one coming." I closed my eyes. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take the things this child was carrying. The weight she held like it was stitched into her bones. And part of me still didn't know what to believe. Until the knock came. 4 in the morning. One knock. Not loud. Not rushed. Just once. I froze. Mia gripped my arm. Her nails dug in. "She doesn't knock," she whispered. I stood slowly, moved to the front door, heart hammering. I looked through the peephole. No one there. I checked the camera feed. Nothing. But when I opened the door, there was another envelope. Inside this one, a drawing. New, fresh ink. A woman standing behind me, holding a child, and in the corner, a third figure drawn in red, crouched low, no face, no hands, buried halfway in the ground. Written across the top in sharp, erratic letters. "You can't take what doesn't belong to you." I didn't show Mia the drawing. I didn't have to. She saw it in my face the second I opened the envelope. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't reach for it. She just whispered, "They know what you did. They think you're like her now." I didn't answer. I sat down on the floor right there in the entryway and stared at the door. Still slightly open, the cold morning air drifting in around my legs. The phrase on the drawing looped through my head like a curse. "You can't take what doesn't belong to you." I wanted to scream. She wasn't theirs. She never was. But I knew what they meant. I'd taken the silence. I'd broken the spell. I'd heard the voice that wasn't supposed to speak. And now they wanted it back. I packed again. Not everything. Just what we could carry. I threw the notebooks, the drawing, the bracelet, the copies, all of it, into the bottom of my duffel and told Mia to get dressed. She didn't ask where we were going. She just tied her shoes like she already knew this wasn't the last time we'd run. We got into the car and I didn't even start the engine right away. I just sat there gripping the wheel, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look like myself anymore. I looked like someone who knew too much to pretend again. Someone who'd seen what happens when secrets rot from the inside and start speaking through children's mouths. Mia climbed into the backseat and buckled herself in. Her voice was barely above a whisper. If you take me to the right place, she'll stop following us. I turned around slowly. Where is that? She looked out the window. Where they buried her. My stomach turned. You know where that is? She nodded once. I saw it. In a dream. But it wasn't a dream. She handed me the bent hairpin again. She wants to be seen. If we find her, she'll let me go. I drove without asking another question. Back roads. No highway. No GPS. Just the directions Mia gave. Left at the blue mailbox. Right where the fence is broken. Straight past the dead tree. I should have felt insane. But I didn't. I felt like I'd already gone too far back to ever return. We stopped at a clearing behind an old orchard, overgrown and forgotten. Mia said nothing as she stepped out of the car. She walked forward like she was being pulled by a string I couldn't see. I followed, every bone in my body resisting. But I followed. She stopped at the edge of a small ditch. Not deep, not wide, just earth that had sunk under its own weight. She pointed. Here. I looked down. No marker, no stone, just soft ground and silence. I knelt. I couldn't help it. I dug, with my hands at first, then with a shovel I kept in the trunk, not even sure why anymore. An hour passed, then another, and then I felt it. Wood, dry, splintered, old. Mia stood behind me, clutching her bear. That's hers, she said. Now you know. Now they can't lie anymore. I pulled the dirt away from the top. A box, cracked open on one side. Inside, cloth, a piece of hair, something small and plastic, shaped like a butterfly. And under it all, bones. Small, curled, real. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. I just fell back into the dirt, staring up at the sky, and for the first time in days, Mia smiled. Not wide, not joyful, just relief. She can sleep now, she whispered. But they won't. I didn't call the police. I didn't call anyone. I don't know if it was shock, or instinct, or something older than that. Something bone deep, something passed down in silence from woman to woman. That when the truth is too dark, too long ignored, no one will help you carry it. You have to carry it yourself. I reburied the box, covered it like I hadn't touched it, packed the dirt down with the back of the shovel until my hands went numb. I told Mia to get in the car. She obeyed without a word. She hadn't spoken since we unearthed the grave, but she didn't look afraid. Just lighter. I drove back in silence, windshield smeared with dust, the trees flashing past like memories I didn't want. We stayed in a motel that night. Cheap, anonymous, cash only. I locked the door and jammed a chair under the knob. Mia slept through the night for the first time since she arrived. I didn't. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the old floral curtains while everything circled in my head. The drawing, the notebook, the photos, the knock, the rope, the two names, the quiet threat that came through an envelope, the smile Nicole gave me when she said, "You're the only one we trust." I opened my phone and reread the last text Nicole had sent me. "Hope she's not giving you too much trouble." I almost laughed. But it caught in my throat. Because now I understood it wasn't sarcasm. It was insurance. It was a test. They wanted to know if I'd be another adult who saw Mia and walked away. Another one who heard the truth and chose silence. But I hadn't, and that changed everything. The next morning I checked out before sunrise. We drove again. Not far. Just far enough to find a place that didn't smell like something hiding behind the walls. A library in a nearby town had a public records terminal. I logged in. I searched Nicole's name, then Tim's. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I found it anyway. 15 years ago. A lawsuit. Sealed juvenile records. A foster child placed in their care before Mia Marie. No photo. No name. Just this. Placement terminated due to emotional instability and inappropriate attachment patterns. A single sentence buried in legal language. A child no one ever talked about. Another forgotten girl. Mia hadn't been the first to disappear. She'd just been the one who didn't stay gone. I printed everything. I sent it to a burner email. I backed it up 3 times. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. But I knew I had to be ready. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. Then it rang again. Same number. I picked up. I didn't speak. The voice on the other end was calm. Female. Dry. You're very good at pretending to be innocent. I stayed silent. But you should have let sleeping things lie. You had your chance to be quiet. I hung up. Blocked the number. Threw the phone into the motel trash can. Mia looked at me from across the room. She knows you found her. I nodded. I know. Mia walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Her voice was flat. She'll come now. She always does when someone remembers. I asked her who she meant. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because I already knew. We stayed off the grid. No phones. No names. Cash only. I stopped trusting every voice. Every car behind us. Every stranger too slow to look away. I cut my hair. Burned everything with our names on it. Changed license plates twice. Mia didn't ask why. She understood. She always understood. But even after all of that, I still felt her, the presence. Not Mia. The other one. The one who didn't want to stay buried. At night I heard things. Not just footsteps or knocks, but whispers, slow, deliberate, like they were crawling through vents and sockets and cracks in the drywall. I stopped trying to convince myself it was just fear. Fear doesn't write in children's drawings. Fear doesn't take photographs from outside locked doors. Fear doesn't know your name when you never said it aloud. In the third motel, I woke up to find Mia sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Her hands were clenched in her lap. Her breathing was calm. She's angry now, she said. She thinks you made a promise. I sat up slowly. What promise? To tell, Mia whispered. She waited, and waited, and now she thinks you won't. I told her I would. That I'd never stop. That we'd take the folder to someone who mattered. A lawyer, a journalist, anyone who'd listen. Mia didn't respond. She just stood and walked to the corner of the room, to the heater vent, and knelt in front of it. She whispered into it again, but this time, I heard my name. Jenna. Again. Jenna. Over and over. Like an echo coming back at her. I pulled her away, held her tight. Her arms didn't resist, but her voice came through my chest as I held her. She's already in. The next morning the motel clerk handed me an envelope. No return name. Just my room number written on the front. I opened it slowly. One photo. Black and white. Mia standing in the orchard clearing. But I wasn't in the frame. And she wasn't holding the bear. She was holding the hairpin. Alone. I turned it over. This time, there was handwriting. Different from the last one. Cursive. Precise. If she remembers what happened, so will they. I crumpled the photo, but the message stuck in my skull. Mia was more than a witness now. She was the key, and they knew it, whoever they were, Nicole, Tim, or something darker. They were watching to see if she'd finally break through the silence. And now I understood the truth wasn't the danger. Remembering was. Mia had remembered, and I had listened, and that was enough to make both of us targets. That night I locked every door again, pushed a dresser in front of the window, tied a bell to the handle of the door so I'd hear it if it moved. But when I opened my eyes at 3:12 a.m., Mia wasn't in bed. The bell hadn't rung. The door was closed, but she was gone. The bed was still warm. The pillow held the faint indent of her head. The bear was gone. I checked the bathroom, the closet, under the bed. Nothing. I stepped into the hallway barefoot, heart pounding like it was trying to warn me before my brain caught up. The motel was quiet. Too quiet. No flickering TVs through thin walls. no voices, no plumbing. Just the hum of something wrong. I moved quickly, trying to stay calm, whispering her name as if saying it louder would somehow break the air around me. I stepped outside. Cold air slammed my skin, but I didn't feel it. The parking lot was empty except for my car and one van I hadn't noticed before. No plates, tinted windows. My feet hit the gravel hard as I ran toward it, heart in my throat, already imagining the worst. But the van was locked. No sound. I pounded on the glass. Nothing. I looked around, trying to listen past the roaring in my ears. Then I saw it. Her bare, propped up on the curb. Clean, centered, too perfect. I ran to it, grabbed it, spun around, and she was standing in the motel doorway, staring at me with a blank expression I'd never seen on her before. Not blank like she was scared. Blank like she wasn't there. I ran to her, dropped to my knees. "Where were you?" She tilted her head slowly. "I don't know. Did someone take you?" She shook her head. "I don't think so. Did you leave?" "I think she did." My stomach turned. "Who's she?" Mia blinked, and for the first time, her voice changed, deeper, slower, like it was coming from somewhere inside her that didn't belong to her. "You shouldn't have dug." I froze. "Mia?" She blinked again and suddenly started crying, loud, heavy sobs that cracked her whole body. I held her, but she shook, her hands clutching the back of my shirt like she was falling through something. "She's mad at me," she sobbed. I wasn't supposed to leave her there alone. I rocked her back and forth on the gravel. My knees scraped, my throat burned, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered now but keeping her in my arms. She sobbed until her body gave out and I carried her back inside, locked the door, and sat on the floor with her asleep against my chest. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold her. When the sun came up, I moved her to the bed, covered her, and went into the bathroom to wash my face. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize what stared back at me. My eyes were bloodshot, my skin sallow, my mouth pale and cracked. I looked like I'd been pulled out of the same grave I'd dug. I turned off the light. And that's when I saw it. A reflection behind me. In the mirror. A woman. Not Mia. Not me. Pale. Blurred. Face missing. Just like the drawing. I turned. Nothing. I spun back to the mirror. Gone. I stumbled out of the bathroom and checked the door. Still locked. Windows latched. Curtains drawn. The dresser still pressed against the glass. But I wasn't alone. I knew that now. We hadn't just uncovered her story. We'd let her in. She wasn't content with being remembered. She wanted justice. And she didn't care who burned in the process. That night, I tried to sleep with the lights on. Mia was quiet, still, her breathing steady. But at exactly 3:12 a.m., she sat up in bed and said, "She wants to show you the rest." I said nothing. I couldn't. My body locked. She stood, took my hand, and led me to the door. "She left it for you." I opened the door slowly. On the concrete in front of our room, another envelope. Thick, yellowed. Inside, 3 Polaroids. All of me. Taken through windows, doors, the rearview mirror. Every one of them from places I hadn't told anyone we were. And one of Mia, asleep. Taken from above. On the back of each one, written in perfect ink, "You let her speak. You finish this, or we will." I didn't run after that last envelope. I didn't hide. Something inside me had already snapped, or maybe it had finally settled. Fear had been eating me alive for weeks, but now it just sat in me like a second spine. Cold, solid, unshakable. I looked at those Polaroids spread out across the motel bed, at Mia watching me with those still, heavy eyes, and I said it out loud for the first time. "We end this now." She didn't speak. She just nodded. We drove, not to the police, not to a station, not to a reporter or lawyer or anyone who could be bribed, pressured, or buried. We drove to the place where it began, the Halston house. The perfect white walls, the trimmed lawn, the glass that never showed what lived behind it. They hadn't called once. Not a text, not an email, no missing child report, nothing. Because they knew. They'd always known. When I parked across the street, I didn't even turn the engine off. I opened the glove box, Pulled out the folder I'd built piece by piece. Records, photos, copies, drawings, everything. I handed it to Mia. You hold it. No matter what happens, you don't let go. She didn't blink, just clutched it to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her alive. I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Once, twice, then I pounded. The porch light flicked on. Nicole opened the door wearing that same soft expression, that mask, like none of it happened. "Jenna," she said, almost a sigh. "Where have you been?" I stepped forward. "Where's Tim?" She paused, then smiled faintly. "Resting. It's been a stressful few weeks." I pushed past her. She didn't stop me. Mia followed close, silent, the folder pressed tight to her ribs. Nicole shut the door behind us and leaned against it. "You shouldn't have come here." I turned slowly. "You think I care?" She shrugged. "You always did care a little too much. That was your problem." "No," I said. "My problem was believing people like you knew what love looked like." Tim appeared at the top of the stairs. Pale, hollow-eyed. "She doesn't belong to you," he said. Mia stepped forward. "I don't belong to you either." And in that moment, her voice wasn't small. It filled the room. Steady, solid, alive. I opened the folder and dropped it onto their polished floor. Pages scattered like glass. Birth certificates. Death records. The photo of the burial site. The hairpin. The drawings. The sealed foster report. All of it. Nicole didn't pick it up. Tim didn't move. I looked at them and felt nothing. Not rage. Not even disgust. Just distance. Like I was staring at two museum exhibits. A study in denial and cowardice. "We're going to the state attorney's office," I said. "The one 2 counties over. I have backups in 3 different places. I'm not asking for answers. I'm not asking for confessions. I'm not asking at all." Mia bent down and picked up one of the photos, the one with the grave. She held it up to them. "You left her alone," she said. "But she's not alone anymore." Nicole opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Tim sat on the step like he'd aged 20 years. I took Mia's hand and walked back to the car. No one followed. No one called. That was 2 years ago. Mia's in school now. Real school. She laughs sometimes. She paints again. We moved states. New names. New life. She sleeps through the night. Most nights. I still keep the folder. Locked in a fireproof safe. Every few months I get a letter. No return address. Always one sentence. The last one said, "There's always another wall." But I don't flinch anymore. Because now when I look at Mia, I don't see the girl who whispered through vents. I see the girl who walked out of silence with her head high. I see the one who remembered for the ones who couldn't. I still hear her voice sometimes in my head. Not Mia's. Hers. The one they tried to erase. The one with no name, no face, no grave. And every time I do, I whisper back, "I didn't forget you. I never will." Because I know what happens when no one listens. And I'll never let that happen again.